Should Christians take the COVID vaccine? The vaccine is front and center in the news, but currently there exists a sizable number of Christians who have indicated they are suspicious of the vaccine. My name is Curtis Chang, and welcome to Redeeming Babel, where our mission is to provide biblical thinking in a confusing world. I'm a former pastor, and now I train pastors and Christian leaders as a seminary professor. In this series, I want to take seriously the questions that some Christians have about the vaccine. But I want to make the case that after considering those questions, ultimately all Christians should indeed take the vaccine and do so for important biblical reasons. There are several questions being asked by Christians. We'll examine these questions in our other videos. However, I believe everyone starts with that first question: is the vaccine safe? So this video will focus on vaccine safety. If you can only watch one video, I recommend you too start with this one. Now, I do believe the vaccine is safe. This is a major reason why I encourage all Christians to take the vaccine. But I think the way this question has gotten framed has unfortunately fallen into the division affecting our country. In our divided society, each side is shouting at the other side. The pro-vaccine side shouts at the anti-vaccine side and says, "You're anti-science and you're ignorant." The anti-vaccine side shouts back and tells the pro-vaccine side to think for yourself and calls them sheeple. Sheeple is a term used by some anti-vaxxers to describe people just mindlessly following conventional wisdom like sheep. Sadly, the way this debate is framed, it's not accurate or fair to either side. For instance, it really isn't accurate or fair for the pro-vaccine side to claim their side knows science and the anti-vaccine side is just being ignorant. I'm someone who is pro-vaccine, but if I'm honest with myself, I have to ask, how much do I really know the science of the vaccine? Yes, I've read several news articles on the vaccine, but have I really mastered even the basics of the science involved? For instance, could I even name the chemical ingredients of the vaccine? No, I can't. Could I explain with any scientific detail why the vaccine attacks the virus but is somehow safe for me? No, I can't. I've not read for myself any of the underlying scientific research papers on vaccine safety, and even if I did, I couldn't understand most of it. If I'm honest, when it comes to the actual science behind vaccine safety, I'm rather, ignorant. So why do I believe the vaccine is safe? Well, the anti-vaccine side does have a point. It's not because I am thinking for myself, in the sense that I'm not depending on anyone else. In truth, I believe the vaccine is safe because I trust others, tasked with answering that question for me. The vaccine is safe because I trust others. I trust the expert leaders of scientific institutions like Dr. Francis Collins, who heads the National Institute of Health, the NIH. Dr. Collins, by the way, is a devout evangelical Christian and one of the nation's leading scientists. Here are his words. As NIH director, I've followed closely the development of these first vaccines, and I know they have been rigorously tested and found to be safe and effective. I encourage everyone to accept the vaccines when offered to you. It's our best chance to turn the tide on the pandemic. Now, I, Curtis Chang, have not followed closely the development of these vaccines. I do not know the details of this rigorous testing. But Dr. Collins has, and I am trusting him. And not just him, but all the leading scientific institutions who agree with him on the safety of the vaccine. The FDA, the CDC, and all the major research institutions tasked with knowing about drug safety have assured us that the vaccine is actually very safe. And this overwhelming agreement by experts cuts across the liberal-conservative divide. Bioethics experts from theologically conservative institutions like the Vatican's Pontifical Academy for Life, the Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians, and the Christian Medical Association have all encouraged people to take the vaccine as safe. Other theologically and politically conservative institutions have joined the chorus of approval. So, is the vaccine safe? The leading institutions tasked with answering this question of public safety have already given their answer. Both secular and Christian institutions have assured us the vaccine is safe. This means that the real question behind is the vaccine safe is actually the question of trust. The real question is, do I trust the people and institutions God has provided to guide me? And this means that what's going on for those on the anti-vaccine side, it's not that they're ignorant, but rather they distrust the designated people and institutions. And this is where I invite the anti-vaccine side to do a parallel self-examination. Because there is a sense on the anti-vaccine side that we're truly independent thinking people who don't just listen to the authorities tell us how to think, rather we think for ourselves. But do we? Do any of us actually think for ourselves in a consistent and complete way? When we go to McDonald's and order a Big Mac, how do we know it's safe to eat? Do we examine for ourselves the quality of the meat at its origin? Or do we trust the USDA? Do we know for ourselves that the meat was transported without contamination? Or do we trust the companies that make up the supply chain? Do we inspect for ourselves to ensure that the kitchen is sanitary? Or do we trust the local health department? The answer is obvious. Every day, we are willing to inject many things into our own bodies because we trust the underlying institutions that have been tasked with knowing these things for us. Every day, we are all trusting in others. None of us fully thinks for ourselves. And here is the key biblical truth that I want to emphasize. That's a good thing. That is the way God designed human beings and human life to operate. God designed us to navigate the world through trusting others, including trusting institutions and experts. Think about the Old Testament. Sure, some rare individuals get direct access to God's truth, but the vast majority of people in the Bible have to trust designated leaders, the prophets, the priests, the kings. People have to trust entire institutions like the system of judges Moses appoints, the Levites, the temple. In the New Testament, Jesus' all-important Great Commission rests on his expectation that the entire world will trust the words of the few he has designated. God has designed us to access truth through trust. Why did God design human life and the world to operate this way? Well, God wants us to become trusting people because trust is necessary to know God himself. Recall the story of Jesus appearing to his disciples after the resurrection. Remember that Thomas is doubting Thomas? He distrusts the testimony of the other disciples. He insists that he must see for himself. He must think for himself. Jesus finally does appear to Thomas directly so that he can see for himself. But when he does, Jesus also gently rebukes Thomas with these words, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Jesus is saying the way of knowing truth is the way of trust. Jesus wants Thomas to become a believing, trusting person with him. And for Thomas, like for us all, becoming a trusting person means trusting the testimony of others. Trusting others is a critical element of growing our trust in God. Conversely, if a person insists on being distrustful of everything and everybody, that person will become a fundamentally distrustful person. A fundamentally distrustful person will have difficulty trusting God. Think of trusting others, including human institutions that God has designated, as a way of building our trust muscles for ultimately trusting in God. Now, of course, trusting human institutions does not mean expecting them to be perfect. Human institutions, like human individuals, have flaws. But just like we have to figure out how to trust imperfect individuals in our lives, like our spouses, our parents, our friends, we also have to learn to trust imperfect human institutions. So if you lean towards the anti-vaccine side, I want to point out that you've already learned to trust the very institutions that are telling you now the vaccine is safe. Every time you buy some aspirin at the drugstore, you are trusting the FDA, who oversees all drug safety. This is the same institution that has approved the COVID vaccine. Every time you've taken any medical treatment, you are trusting the foundational research behind that treatment, research that most likely relied on the NIH, the institution headed by Francis Collins. You already trust these institutions for yourself and your loved ones. Please keep trusting them as they tell you that the vaccine is safe. The coronavirus has disrupted our world, caused enormous suffering of all kinds, and at the time of this recording, killed over 2 million people globally and over 400,000 Americans. The vaccine is our best chance at ending this suffering and preventing more deaths. But the vaccine does not have all the ingredients necessary to accomplish this. It needs one ingredient that only you can supply. This is the ingredient of trust. Let's add our part to the solution. The pandemic has spread person to person. Ending the pandemic will also spread person to person, as each of us shares the necessary truth about the vaccine to those who are unsure. If you know someone who would benefit from this video, please take the time to share it with them.